Welcome to The Soul Truth with Pauline Montemayor, the podcast where we dive deep into the worlds of healing and the truths about spirituality, mental health, and the soul. This podcast is for the real ones, the ones who have the courage to dig deep, the ones who are longing to heal and willing to do the work, and the ones who are ready to embrace and fully stand in their own truth and get to know who they truly are deep within the soul. I'm your host, Pauline, here to guide you towards your own soul truth and cultivating a life of authenticity and alignment. So let's get into it. Welcome back to The Soul Truth with Pauline Montemayor. On this episode, I'll be sharing more about soulful living and what it means to live in total alignment. As we embark on this new year, which for many people is often a chance to restart, recenter, and have a clean slate, I'm going to start off this podcast by asking all y'all a question. Are you really living? And what I mean by that is, are you living in a soulful, purpose-filled, fulfilling, meaningful, and aligned way? And the reason why I ask this question is because lately I've been observing things about myself, about society, and even the people around me. And I noticed that there's a lot of people out here who are not really living. Matter of fact, a lot of people in this day and age are just existing. They're just going through their day-to-day life, day-to-day motions, just trying to get by and survive and succeed to however they see fit. So when I ask this question of, are you really living? I want you to think about, do you feel like your life is filled with purpose? Do you feel connected to yourself and to what you are actually doing? Do you find meaning and fulfillment in your life, including your day-to-day routine things? What I've noticed so much of with myself before, and even as a therapist and just observing today's world and society, is that a lot of people are not living in alignment, meaning they are not in full connection with themselves. They are not in full connection with their soul, and therefore they are not in full connection with their purpose. And I think a big reason for this is because a lot of people out here are doing things and living in ways that they think they should be doing, or what has been taught and told to them throughout their life. As we know, society has its norms, and a lot of people out here are living to fulfill those norms and are confining themselves to those norms. But the reality is sometimes those norms may not align with you. And in fact, they may not align at all with your soul's purpose. What makes it even harder is that we are living in a world and in a day and age that is continually trying to disconnect you from yourself. If you look at everything that's present, right, especially in the digital, electronic media worlds, there is so much going on that is trying to disconnect you from yourself. It is set up so that you don't listen to yourself. You don't tune into yourself. Matter of fact, what you're tuning into is artificial intelligence. What you're tuning into is media. What you're tuning into is something, everything other than you. And the problem with being in disconnection or in separation from yourself and from your soul is that you are not able to then tune in to understand those deep parts of you, to understand the wisdom and the intelligence of your soul and your entire being that you were born with. We already know a lot of things, but a lot of today's world is relying on other things and other people to give them information that, in fact, you probably already know and your soul probably already has embedded in it. Now, here's the thing. This is actually not anything new in terms of being in separation or disconnection from yourself or your spirit. In fact, the wounds of this go all the way back to colonization. When you think about the periods of colonialism throughout history, so much of what the colonizers did was separate people from themselves, separate people from their identity, from their culture, from their community, from their spirituality, and from their traditions, rituals, and practices. Disconnection was the weapon that was used to create power and control over the people that were being colonized. When you think about today's society and everything that we have in it, there are still tools and methods of separation and disconnection that are being utilized. The scary part is it is so embedded in our society, in our day-to-day life and gadgets and routines that oftentimes people don't even recognize its existence. When you think back to the historical periods of colonization, a lot of what happened is that the people that were being colonized were now being told how to live their life. They are being told who they now needed to be and what they were supposed to be doing. They lost that sense of autonomy and agency that they once possessed before the colonizers came in. So, what ended up happening is now all these people are living in a way that pleases somebody else. They're now forced to live in a way that meets the expectations and the standards of another person and those other people's culture. Now, in the sense of intergenerational trauma, this new way of operating and being in terms of pleasing and meeting the expectations of others has now been passed on for centuries down the bloodline. And it's become ingrained in a lot of cultural upbringing and practices, which is where a lot of people pleasing tends to come from. People pleasing is such a common term that people talk about these days, but did you ever really stop to think about the origins of people pleasing? Because it actually stems back to colonization. The only difference is back then, if they did not people please the colonizers, there was very serious consequences that were inflicted upon those people, our ancestors. There are actually violent roots to people pleasing that a lot of people often don't think about. You know, we think now in this day and age, oh, I'm just doing this because I want to make my parents happy, or I want to make this person please or approve of me. Okay. And we don't have to necessarily face those harsh and violent consequences that our ancestors did. But that behavior of people pleasing, that mindset of people pleasing is connected to very traumatic and violent times in history. Now, I'm saying all this because I need you guys to understand the power of the influence of this behavior and how it may have affected the lives of your ancestors and your bloodline for centuries ago. But it's still happening today in the sense that those same tactics, those same methods of living are still being carried out today in the sense that there's a lot of people out here who are not living for themselves. What I have seen so much of, especially in my work as a psychotherapist, is the unhappiness of people is deeply connected to the fact that they are living to please somebody else. They are doing what other people want them to do. They are pursuing things and living out a dream that is somebody else's. They are hustling their whole life away to meet the expectations of somebody else. And over time, that takes its toll because now you're not living for yourself, you're living for everybody else but you. And then here comes the unhappiness. Here comes the depression. Here comes the lack of fulfillment, the lack of meaningful or purpose-driven action in your life. Now, I will say that being an older millennial and working in the mental health field has allowed me to see changes and shifts that people within my generation or even Gen X have been doing to do things differently. I have seen more people pivoting and making shifts and changes to do things that now feel more aligned and in connection with them and their path and their goals and dreams. Now, I'm not just saying that this is restricted to only millennials and Gen X. I mean, this can include the boomers, which I've seen as well. And this also can include, Gen Z and even Gen Alpha, everybody just trying to learn and do things differently so that we're not repeating some of the things that we may have experienced or have carried on into our adult lives. I think what's especially happening in this day and age, and especially in this current economy and society, is a lot of people are realizing that they cannot do, nor do they want to do, what their parents did. I'm finding that a lot of people are encountering a lot more hardship and obstacles to be able to follow the path of their elders. And what I'm also seeing is some people don't want to follow that path anymore. They want to do something completely different. As I mentioned in my first episode, I myself am a first generation Filipino American. I'm the daughter of immigrant parents. And I think for a lot of us who are first gen kids, we are now facing very different obstacles and challenges and problems that our parents did not face when they were probably our age. It is just a completely different time, different culture, different society, different economy. Like a lot of people cannot do what they have been told or raised or encouraged to do throughout their life. For a lot of us who are children of immigrants, who are first gens, our parents came here to pursue the American dream. They came here to provide a better life for all of us. But I gotta ask, is that dream still even real? Does that same dream that our parents pursued still exist today? As I've observed, especially working with my adult clients, I would like to think that the dream has shifted a little bit. I think it's being reinvented, to be honest. And I think what we're seeing happening now more in society is for some people, they're realizing it's not just about money. It's not just about buying a house. It's not about having this high paying, well accomplished job and title. Did you ever think about the fact that maybe now the dream is you just living your life, you pursuing your passions, you living out your goals and your soulful mission without having to make so many sacrifices and hardship that our parents or caregivers may have had to give? When you think about freedom, when you think about a fulfilling life, what I just described to me sounds more like a dream where you're not being a slave to capitalism. You're not being a slave to money. You're not being defined by what you have, your assets, or your titles. You are living in a way that is true to you. You are moving and grooving out here the way you want to. And to me, that sounds like the dream in comparison to what exists and what has been told of the dream for all these years. You know, it's crazy because when I think about my parents, when they were the age that I am now, they were living a whole different life, okay? My parents, when they were my age, they already had my siblings and I. They had the house, they had steady 9 to 5s. You know, they were living a very traditional life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am not throwing shade at all at the traditional life and pathway. And when I think about where I am in my life now and being the age of my parents, it is so different. If I really wanted to go down a rabbit hole and compare myself to my parents or to their generation of what was considered success and accomplishment, I would be sitting here feeling really bad about myself because I don't have any of the things that my parents had that I just mentioned when they were my age. I do not own a home. I am not married. I do not have children. I don't have that traditional quote unquote life. However, I'm not about to sit here and feel bad about myself and compare myself to a very different time and standard. Because what I will say is I may not have those things in my life yet. And I say yet because I do believe that they are coming into my life at the right and proper time. But I can sit here and say, I have my own business that is thankfully very successful. I work for myself. I have amazing community and connection around me with the people in my life. I have time to live. I go out, I travel, I do the things I want to do. I engage in my hobbies and my interests and my activities. I have time for rest. I have time for play. And that to me sounds like success. I think it's really important for everybody to understand that you can redefine the definition of success. I have seen so many people, personally and professionally, be so hard on themselves and be so upset and so down on themselves because they haven't accomplished these traditional life goals. They haven't found the partner yet. They haven't bought the house yet. They haven't had children yet. They haven't had that big promotion or title or salary at their job. Y'all really out here beating yourself up for what? Who said that that has to be the standard? In fact, a lot of those standards were built through colonization and patriarchy and capitalism. So I guess the question is, are those the standards that you want to be living by? Are those the standards that you want to be striving to meet that are based on those principles within our society, and especially here in our country in America? I think the reality is that the standards of success are changing, and you have the power to redefine what those are. If you don't want those traditional things, it's cool. It's okay. I've encountered a lot more people now, especially in my work as a therapist, who don't want those traditional things. And it's really okay. And I think it's important to validate yourself in knowing that what you want, even if it's different than the norm, even if it's different than society, even if it's different than the masses, it's okay. Because if that's what you want deep down in your soul, then that's what's for you. I think it can be really helpful to be flexible with your standards, to be flexible with how you define and look at success. Don't be so hard on yourselves. I mean, I tell you, I have literally seen people beat themselves up, myself included. There have been times where I'm like, yo, Pauline, what are you doing? You need to get it together. You need to figure out your life. I've had these conversations many times with myself, but then I have to take a minute and pause. And I got to take a minute to look at what I have actually accomplished and done in my life and how I'm living my life. And I'm like, wait a minute, this really ain't so bad because I'm living in a way that does feel fulfilling to me. I'm living in a way that is meaningful. I'm living in a way that has purpose and intention. And I'm living in a way that fulfills and satisfies my soul. And to me, that is success. As I mentioned in my last episode, so much of what has helped me to heal in my life from my own traumas and my own insecurities and challenges, it was really me just being me coming more and more into myself, embodying more of who I actually am, and really tapping in and connecting to my soul and its purpose and mission in this world and in this life. Thankfully, I have been blessed enough to pursue the things that I want to do. And I think that's off of the sacrifices that my parents and elders and ancestors have made for me. And I think as first gen kids, or even if you're second gen, this is important to think about because you are now in a position, thankfully, where you may have more opportunity to do things differently in your life and achieve and accomplish different things the way that you want to, with gratitude for the sacrifices and hardship that our ancestors and relatives have endured for us. You know, it's funny because about a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with my brother and we were talking about finances. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have all the money in the world. I don't have the biggest savings account in the world. And I was saying this to my brother and I said, look, I may not have the biggest bank account out there, but I will tell you this. I live my life. I go out, I do me, I do the things I want to do, I travel, I have fun. And that to me makes it all okay. You know, because I think we were raised to be very cautious about certain things, to be very mindful about certain things like money and titles and status. But I think it's really important to ask yourself at this point in your life, however old you are, how truly important is that to you? Is that bringing fulfillment into your life? Is that giving you a sense of purpose and meaning, or are you feeling empty? Are you feeling burnt out? Are you feeling drained? Are you feeling lost and confused? Because if the answer is yes to any of those last things I just mentioned, we need to reevaluate something. We need to tap into the soul. You need to tap into your soul and find out what it is that you're really supposed to be doing out here. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I had this all figured out for the longest time. I sure as hell did not. Okay. There were many years in my life that I felt lost. There were definitely years in my life where I was clearly unhappy. And it took people in my life telling me flat out, Pauline, you are clearly unhappy. You are not okay with what you have in your life right now. And it took those people calling me out and me having the courage to recognize and admit to my own unhappiness that then pushed me to start looking at things that I could do to actually make myself happy and live a life that I felt satisfied and content with. I had to take the time to try things and pursue things that I've always wanted to try or do to see if that would actually help me to feel better. And they did, because now I was actually starting to put myself first. And I was starting to lean more into my own happiness and figure out and understand what would help it to grow. And it was during this time that I discovered I was really into fitness. It's when I discovered boxing. It's when I recognized more and more of my love for traveling. It's when I realized I still love reading books. I was a whole bookworm as a kid. I stopped reading for many years in my adult life. And then I started reading again and I realized this feels great. I love this. I started just, dipping and dabbling into things that either used to give me joy when I was younger or things that I've always wanted to try or pursue. And me taking the opportunity and having the courage to try these things again or reintroduce them into my life is what really brought more happiness, more fulfillment, and more alignment into my life. I often ask people all the time, especially in my therapy sessions, who are you living for? Are you living for yourself or are you living for somebody else? Are you living for your parents? Are you living for your partner? Are you living for your children? Are you living for society or your peers? And there are many reasons why people may not fully live their life. But I gotta say, in my own observation, the biggest reason for that is fear. I myself was one of those people that allowed fear to run my life. As I've mentioned in my previous episodes, I have anxiety. I've had it my whole life. I have an A+ in overthinking and analyzing. And I've allowed my fear for many years to stop me from doing things that I've always wanted to do. And as I've mentioned in these last few episodes, these past 5 years or so have really been the journey of me overcoming my fear and living in a more intentional and purpose filled way. I have seen so many people be so confined and restricted in their life because of their fear and anxiety. I have seen people not be able to do the things they deeply want to do because they are scared. They are anxious. They are worried that something bad is going to happen or that it's not going to work out. They are afraid of failure. They are afraid of judgment. They are afraid that they will not make it out here. But I always say this all the time, you will never know what you don't try. I have seen countless people complain about their life over and over and over again. And I say this professionally and personally. And we see it on social media too. We see mad people complaining all the time about their life. And woe is me, misery, let me bust out my violin for you. But the problem is, so many people complain, but they don't want to do anything to actually change their life. They don't want to do anything to actually change their circumstances because they've allowed the fear to take over. They have allowed the fear to overwhelm them, to overpower them, and make them feel like they cannot do this. That is a lie. That is a lie. We can sit here and blame people all day. All right. We can sit here, we can blame our parents, we can blame our partner, we can blame this ex-partner, society, the government, etc. We could sit here and play the blame game all day long. But at some point in time, we have to take responsibility for our own life. We have to take control of ourselves, our life, our narrative, our path, and take the steps to change it. I also want to add in that fear is oftentimes produced by our own personal experiences, but it can also very well be passed down intergenerationally. I've seen a lot of people be raised in a certain way because of the fear and anxiety of their parents or the fear and anxiety of the people around them. And that has affected how they think and how they act and how they move. So fear is incredibly powerful, which is kind of scary, but it can be overcome. There are ways to counter it and conquer it, but you got to be willing to try. If you sit here and keep saying, I can't do this and that, you've already let fear win. But if you really want to be out here and live a life that feels good to you, that feels soulful and successful, fear has no place in that life. You cannot have that type of life with fear present all the time. It just cannot be that way. Now, truthfully, we've all had our own set of traumas that we have been through in our lives. Some of those traumas may be similar to our parents. They may be different. They may be worse. I want to take a moment to really acknowledge the fact that in this current day and age, we are living through collective trauma. There is a lot happening, and that has happened in this world and within the society. When I look at my life, especially as a millennial, we've been through a gazillion traumatic life events and disasters and unprecedented events, etc. Like we've seen a lot of things we probably should not have been seeing in this lifetime, but we have. And even until now, we are still living through collective trauma. There is still massive and serious war and violence and crime and oppression and disasters that are still happening in this day and age. We cannot sit here and ignore the fact that this is happening, all right? Because it does have an effect on us. We're fed it every single day on social media. And I want to make a note, and I say this a lot to my clients in therapy. The amount of trauma that we are exposed to on social media is not normal. Our brains were not wired nor equipped to handle that type of exposure to trauma at the frequency that we are experiencing it in today's world. We are not supposed to be seeing these horrific videos and images every single day. None of this stuff is normal. And I say all this to say that it's really important to be very mindful of how much of this content you are consuming. We are surrounded by drama, trauma, and conflict all the time. That is not normal. Our brains were not designed or wired to process it at this level. But with that being said, it is important to just be very mindful of how much you're consuming, what you're consuming, and more importantly, it is then our responsibility to be very, very intentional about how we are living our life. If we are not intentional about how we are living out here, if we are not living in a way that is in alignment or in a soul-driven, purposeful, or fulfilling way, we are going to get caught up in that mix. And I'm sure many of you have, and I have too before. I've gone down those rabbit holes. I've doom scrolled. I've watched a gazillion videos of things I should not be seeing that are horrific and traumatic and violent. But if we don't take responsibility for our lives and take control over what we're doing, you part of the matrix. I hate to say it, but you are. And the goal now, the goal that's been the goal is to get out of it. Get out of it. Here's a key point. Thankfully, because of some of the progression in society and within the mental health field, within the spiritual fields, within society, because it's not all bad, all right? We thankfully now are resourced and have access to things that people did not have before us. And with those resources, we are now equipped or able to make different choices than our elders have, or our ancestors have, or even our peers. We now have developed and learned different ways to cope, different ways to process things, different ways to approach things that can help us to move forward and progress in healthier, more fulfilling, and meaningful ways. If you really think about it, we are incredibly blessed to be able to do things and have opportunities that our elders or ancestors did not have. And I'm not just referring to material things like living in a big house or having some big corporate job or having a degree or having this status or this money. I'm not just referring to those material things. I'm talking about even the simple things like being able to go to therapy, being able to use your gifts and talents and passions in your life or in your work, being able to be seen and be heard, being able to show up in spaces that they may not have been able to be in, being able to pursue your passions and your interests and your hobbies. Those are gifts. And I think it's so important to not take advantage of the resources and blessings and opportunities that we have. And those are the things that can put us into alignment. Those are the things that can help us to live a soulful, aligned life. You know, when you think about historical periods of oppression and enslavement, our ancestors were not allowed to do a lot of these things, even the basic things like being heard, speaking up, being seen, walking into a certain space. Like the things that we take advantage of and may not even think twice about are huge blessings that we have now that other people did not have before us. And sadly, there are still people today in this world that don't have those opportunities and blessings. It's still going on. For many of us, our ancestors, and when I say ancestors, I'm not just referring to people that live like hundreds of years ago. I'm even referring to like our parents, our aunts and uncles, our relatives, our grandparents, okay? Because this applies to them as well. But for many of our ancestors who have lived through traumatic periods of oppression and enslavement or colonization, there was violence involved that prohibited them from being able to do these things, like speak up or go to school or accomplish certain things. And a lot of the fear that we may carry within our DNA and that may have been passed down to us intergenerationally stems back to these time periods. Now, I'm going to ask you this question, and I want you to really think about what I'm going to say. Do you want to keep living in that same type of fear? Do you want that type of fear that our ancestors carried and felt to continue to interfere or monopolize your life? Thankfully, for some of us, we do not have to deal with those levels of violence or oppression that our ancestors have faced. And again, I'm going to say this, that there are unfortunately still people in today's world and society that are still facing that. But for those of us who are not under those types of oppressive acts in this current time, I want you to really think about, how can you start to live differently? How can you start to live in a way that no longer carries that generational fear through you and into your life? If you want something different, if you want something different than your parents, your elders, your ancestors, your peers, this society, you got to do different. You have to be different, and you're going to have to choose different. The reality is your soul truth is going to put you on a very different path than the masses. It's about letting go of the fear of being able to create your own path and your own lane. Living out your soul truth is that. It is about creating your own path. You laying the bricks and the blocks down. You saying what it is and what you're choosing now to walk on and walk into. You cannot live out your soul truth and live a soulful life if you are following the path of somebody else. And this includes our parents, our relatives, our peers, our colleagues, and society as a whole. And of course, I gotta mention, this also includes social media and media in general. So many people look up to and aspire to want to be like these celebrities and these content creators and influencers. And yo, let's be so for real. Majority of what is on social media is not real. It is not real. It is curated to appear a certain way that will be to your liking. It is curated to look fabulous and glorious and successful and amazing. But half the time, as we've seen over and over and over again, it's not real. And then the truth comes out and we see it was all a fraud, it was all a show, and that there was all this craziness happening behind the scenes that was not being shown. So if you are following the path of these people, you know, even these big media influential people, I think you got to really ask yourself, is this even a real path? Is this even an authentic path? And most importantly, is this a path that aligns with you? Is this a path that is actually in connection to the authenticity of who you actually are? You know, it's honestly really crazy how much this society has continued to conform to certain things and the loss of individuality and agency and autonomy that is growing rapidly day to day. I saw a reel last week. Matter of fact, my friend posted it on his story. And it was somebody taking a video of people in the mall. And everybody in that mall had on the same outfit. They all had on a hoodie, wide leg sweatpants, and those UGG slides, those slip-ons. I know I see this a lot when I go out, when I'm out in the stores, the mall, but I don't think I really realized how prominent that has become until I saw this reel. And then it made me sit there and think about my time growing up. And, back in the 90s, fashion was a whole nother language. All right. We expressed who we are through what we wore. It was a statement. And for me personally, it's still a statement. Okay. I still carry that 90s mentality when it comes to my fashion and my style. But back in the day, nobody wanted to look the same. Okay, you were the dopest one if you had something that nobody else had. Everybody wanted that exclusive joint. Everyone wanted that jacket that nobody had, those sneakers that were exclusive and dead stock or sold out. Everybody wanted what no one else had. That's what made you fly back then. That's what made you dope. And now, fast forward to this day and age, it's like, you're weird if you're not wearing this uniform that so many people are wearing now. Like, people look at you kind of sideways if you're now dressing in a way that stands out. Like, what has happened? How unfun is that? Like, me personally, I know this is a very materialistic, superficial example, but I love fashion and I love to express myself through what I wear. And I'm just saying this to say that we have lost even those senses of identity and expression in society, where people are now afraid to even really not only be themselves, but even show themselves out here, because it's like being different now is the odd thing out. And being different is a gift. Being different is dope. To me, that's fire. I love people who are different, and I love people who are not afraid to show it. We need more of that out here. We need people to be different. We need people to be themselves, because I'm tired. I'm tired of looking at these clones every single day. And I'm sure you are too, but I'm tired of seeing the same face. I'm tired of seeing the same fit. I'm tired of seeing everybody trying to be like everybody else. Can we please bring back individuality? Can we please bring back authenticity? Can we please bring back self-expression? Give yourself permission to be yourself. Give yourself permission to live the life that you want to live. As I mentioned, so many people are afraid to do this because they're following the blueprint of somebody else's life. Living in your soul truth means living a soulful life. It means being 100% authentic. It means using your unique gifts and talents and strengths with the world. It means expressing yourself freely and moving with purpose and intention. It means choosing things, even in your everyday life, that are in full alignment with you, your soul, and your goals and missions in this world. That means that everything you do, and I mean every single thing you do, should feel and be in full connection to you, your soul, and your entire being, not to someone else. And this applies in all aspects of life. This applies to your personal life, to your relationships, to your professional life, in your workspace. Now, I am not perfect, and I don't have a perfect life, but I can say that I feel incredibly blessed to now be living a life that feels very intentional and that feels in alignment with me, my soul, my gifts and talents that I know God has put within me. And all of this really started to happen when I stopped caring about what other people think. I stopped living in fear and anxiety, and I started doing me. And I started exploring more of who I actually am and coming into more understanding of myself and my soul. And I know, as I mentioned in my last episode, that in these past few years, I've come out in different ways that probably have really confused some people and even shocked them. But guess what? People are allowed to change. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to redefine yourself at any point in time. There is no restriction to this. So I dare you to be different. I dare you to be yourself. I dare you to be the unique person that you are in a society where everybody wants to be like someone else. For many of us in this current time, we have been called to be cycle breakers. We have been entrusted to break the cycles and patterns within our family, within our bloodline and lineage, within society that have kept us small, that have kept us oppressed, that have kept us enslaved. It's time. But you cannot break the cycle. You cannot break the patterns if you are not living in authenticity and alignment. If you are not living in a way that truly connects with your soul, it's going to be real hard to break those patterns. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, our ancestors, many of them were forced to live a certain type of way because of colonization, oppression, war, slavery, etc. The truth is that those things are still existing in today's world. We are still living in a colonized world, whether you want to believe it, see it, or not, it is true. Those same systems that were put in place during those times in history still exist today. They are still running wild and controlling and dictating a lot of this society and how people live. The patterns of history are still repeating to this day. The colonizers are still colonizing, y'all. It has not ended. The only thing is that their weapons now, their tactics and tools are less overt. And they are so deeply embedded and ingrained in our society, in our systems, that most people don't even realize that they're there. The only way to free ourselves, to free our lineage, our ancestors, our future, is to get out of this cycle. Please stop conforming and following the crowd, following the masses. The crowd is lost. If you haven't already peeped that, the crowd has been lost. That ain't it. And I guarantee you, your soul truth is not in the crowd. It is not in the masses. It is not in all these influential people you see on social media. Your soul truth is within you. It is deep inside of you, deep in your soul, and you are the only person that can get it out. So as I said before, don't be afraid to make your own lane. Honestly, I can look back now and say that's the best thing I ever did, was just make my own lane and move in a way that was authentic and in alignment for myself. Now, I do want to give a full disclaimer. Sometimes being in your own lane, being on this path of soulful living and alignment and authenticity, it can be lonely at times. There are times, even to this day, that I do feel alone. There are times where I feel like people don't really understand or support what I'm doing. There are times where I feel like I can't necessarily just talk to anybody about some of these things, especially the deeper, more spiritual parts of myself, because a lot of people don't understand me on that level or don't speak my language. But do not allow that to discourage you, because I will say that God has always put even just a few people around me that get me. I don't need a crowd. I just need a few solid people that get me, that speak my language, and understand me on that level. So despite how lonely or alone or misunderstood or unsupported I have felt at times, I need y'all to understand that God and the universe has always provided me with at least one, if not a few people who really get it. And the same will be done for you. Quality over quantity, y'all. That's what it is. So I'm going to end this podcast in the same way that I started it. Are you really living? If the answer is yes, and you feel that you are living in a way that is soulful, that is purposeful, that is fulfilling and meaningful and in alignment with you, yo, keep going. Keep living that life, because I promise you, more is definitely coming your way. Because when we are in alignment, that is when the doors open. That is when abundance starts to show up. And if your answer is no, or if you are unsure, then it's time to get to work. Take time to really think about and identify what is holding you back, what is stopping you, what is causing that resistance or that fear in your life. Don't be afraid to try things and to take bold and actionable steps that will help you to pursue and accomplish your dreams and your goals. Have the courage and the bravery and the strength to break out of the cycles and patterns that are in our life or in our lineage. Ask and pray to your ancestors to help you to do this work, because they will. They will absolutely guide and assist you. All you got to do is ask. Do what makes you feel alive. Do what makes you feel a sense of purpose. Do what sets your soul on fire. That is your soul truth. We have one life to live on this earth and in this lifetime. So do you. Live it up. Live in a soulful and purposeful way. Live in a way that is meaningful and that brings fulfillment into your life. Let your life be a testament to the greatness that you are and the greatness that God has embedded into your soul. Live your soul truth out loud, because that right there is alignment. Thank you for listening to The Soul Truth with Pauline Montemayor. I hope this sacred wisdom will continue to guide you along your path. We would love to hear from our listeners, so please show some love by leaving a review and a rating. Stay real, stay you, and stay blessed.